Okay, so let's elevate our thoughts to our Almighty Father, God, and to all these benefactors He's sending us permanently in order to assist us, to help us overcoming the natural difficulties of life, and who are asking us to make our duty by elevating our thoughts from time to time, by studying, by putting in practice, which indeed will put the link closer so that we can get their assistance and their support through intuition, inspiration. And this is why we are grateful today to be gathered in order to study the Medium's book. So I will share the screen.
Guilherme wouldn't be with us today.
No, he's taking his son to Southampton, because his son will be next year in the university there, apparently.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so item 137. So we have seen before the serious communications. We have seen also the frivolous communication. Okay, and now we come to the instructive communications. And Kardec is saying instructive communications are serious communications whose main purpose is to provide teaching given by spirits about the sciences, morality, philosophy, etc. So instructive communication are a subcategory of the previous category, which are serious communications, okay? But that bring teachings. And of course, it was particularly active, common at the time of the codification, because there was a need for the spirit to bring the teachings in order to enable, to build and to complete the Spiritist philosophy. Okay. Today we still have maybe bringing information about the actuality, or bringing also indications of how to help to assist spirits in needs, or things like that. Okay. Their greater or lesser profoundness depends on the particular spirit's degree of advancement and dematerialization. Okay. You see this word dematerialization is in italics, and we know that the more the spirits are evolved, the more dematerialized they are. Okay, so this goes with evolution, and of course, in order to bring teachings about sciences, morality, philosophy, it needs from the spirits who is bringing this information, this advancement and consequent dematerialization. Yes, Munir?
I just want to call attention, Charles. The first paragraph, it says science, morality, and philosophy. And these are the main pillars of Spiritism. And the other thing is that it doesn't talk about religion, it talks about morality. And I mean, it's interesting that they highlight these three main areas that compose
Exactly, yes,
the
yes,
aspects
exactly
of the Spiritism.
And this is of particular importance here in Europe, or because of the negative image or perception that the population has about religion, because of all the abuses done by the representative of the religion. And basically, Jesus brought moral teachings. He did not bring a religion. Religions are things done by the human. So it's good that Kardec is really indeed, let me check in the French. You see, the same, huh? It's not taking religion, okay? In order to take full advantage of such communications, they must be regular and followed with perseverance. Serious spirits connect themselves to those who desire to be taught, and they assist them, whereas they leave frivolous spirits the job of entertaining those who only see communications as being a type of temporary distraction. So it looks a little bit repetitive, but it's again fundamental to understand it. That's why when we have mediumistic meeting, for instance, where we aim to receive instructive communication, we need to have them regularly, given time and day in the week, if it's weekly. And we really must do whatever we can not to fail to participate. Only really in case of force majeure or some big event or something that we can, how to say, miss, but not because I'm a little bit tired or I'm a little bit this or I'm a little bit that. That's we should avoid, because what the frivolous spirits they want is exactly to take us away from these serious meetings where we get instructive communications. And the serious spirits, the same Kardec is writing, they do not stay where the people are not serious. I mean, it's obvious. So here we see one clear condition to be fulfilled. It's not the only one, but it's one clear condition to be fulfilled in order to have good spirits participating to the meeting. It is only through the regularity and frequency of these communications that we can appraise the moral and intellectual value of the spirits who are communicating with us, as well as the degree of trust they deserve. If we require experience in order to judge other people, we need it even more to judge spirits. This is, again, very simple sentences from Kardec and very clear. A bad spirit can come and bring some copy-paste of something, and we think it's a good spirit, but it's not. But with the time, there you can see the differences, because the good spirits, they will bring things which really are of help, and the bad spirits, sooner or later, they will show or give signs of who they really are. But this needs perseverance, regularity, frequency, in order to gain the experience. Okay. And look at what is Kardec is making the parallel with people. So understood incarnated people. Yes, Liz?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to mention that one of the things that spirits that are not very evolved, that don't have good intentions, they do manipulate our vanity very much to get what they want. So obviously, when we have elevated spirits, they will give us good advice. It is always in a sense of stimulating us to good things. And sometimes they can be quite firm as well.
Yeah, when we are doing some things which are wrong, they call our attention. But they will call attention once or twice. And if we really insist in that way, then they don't come anymore. As simple as that. Huh? Yes, I was saying, when we look what's happening today, we are receiving a lot of information daily. Every time of the day, we receive a lot of information. And here he's using the verb judge, I would say, to the discernment, making the difference between what is worse and what is not. Or the Socratic filter, I think I mentioned the last time. Is it true? Is it good? And is it opportune for the moment? And if any one of the answer to these three questions is I'm not sure or is no, you better put the thing apart and wait for some confirmations, okay? And this is true not only for Kardec was just making the parallel between what we need to judge people for judging spirits, but we can use these teachings today daily to judge the people and the information we receive. Munir?
Yeah, it's very interesting because there's so many important information here that Kardec, tells us in a very simple way, as you said, Charles. The first thing is in the previous paragraph, it said that the aim of enlightened spirits is to bring teaching to those who want to be taught. So it's not for us to, see mediumship as a way of material gain. So we then can see, as they say, they leave, other spirits not as advanced, to do this, to work with these mediums who have different interests. And the other thing is regularity and frequency. This is very important because sometimes we get one single message and then we say, wow, this message comes from an enlightened spirit or even Jesus. Sometimes people believe, it comes directly from up there. But it's very scientific. You can't conclude an experiment with just one measurement. You have to repeat it many times so that, it has to be consistent. And what, the Kardec is saying here is that it has to be consistent. They have to come many times. They have to come regularly, and not just one spirits. Then you can analyze the teachings that you have in your hands. And that's basically the work he did. He worked with the messages that, all together made some sense. Then you can say, yes, I have something here which is consistent.
We could also compare with the school or with the university. We don't go to the school for temporary distraction or for curiosity. We go there to study. So it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
If we want instructions, instructive communication, we need to go in this mindset of study. So he's continuing, if we deem such communications to be instructive, we therefore suppose them to be true. For something that is not true cannot be instructive, even if transmitted in the most striking language. So it's the first question of the Socratic filter. Is it true? Of course, it's not always simple to determine whether something is true or not. Sometimes we see obviously that it is false. So then it's not a serious spirit, not a good spirit, which is here, or a spirit which may be serious, but with poor knowledge. That is also existing, as we have seen in the previous paragraph. So if we are not sure if something is true, and that's mostly what happens today, we receive a lot of information alarming us about this, alarming us about that, and is it really true what is said to us? That requires, how to say, some trustable sources of information. Also common sense. We by the common sense, often we can determine whether something is likely or not. And then it requires maybe some searches or some asking to some colleagues really about the subject. And in how to say, more difficult questions, like, for instance, the debate which occurred in France about the age of retirement, but the people which are against, they say there is a lot of money. So is it true or not? Of course, there is a lot of money, but the system itself is in deficit. So either some decision is taken to subsidize from somewhere else, some other sources of revenues, Or if you don't want to be dependent, you have to make the system balanced, which is, in my opinion, safer. So you see, but the problem is the fake news. The people who are saying something which is false, they convince much easier a lot of people when the information they give is what the people are willing or wishing. And then once the people are convinced of something which is fake or false, it's a huge work to discuss with those persons and to make them understand that they have accepted as true something which indeed is not. So they can accept in 1 second something which is false, and then you will need hours or days or even years in order to convince the person that it was not true. Munir?
No, it's just sometimes it's easy to find something that is not true, but sometimes people tell you half the truth. This is more difficult. You mentioned that. Yes, there is money. Yes, there is money. It's true. But that money is not available for that purpose. That money is already, spent, as it were. So you just tell what is interesting, to support your whatever you want people to believe. But then I think it's more difficult to to find these things, because yes, there is money, and then you guide people said, oh, if there is money, let's use this money for this.
Yeah. I don't want to work more time. Let's use the money of the rich people, and so on and so on and so on. So so it's deviating the discussion from having something which is balanced, adjusting to the demographic evolution, and the fact that somewhere else, of course, there is money, there is an uneven distribution of the goods, which is absolutely true as well, but which is something like an excuse. You use a true which is out of the subject as an excuse to push in the opposite way the subject you are willing. And the spirits are behaving exactly the same.
Yes.
They will use the same type of artifacts in order to deviate us from our missions or from our learning or from the instructions. Okay. Thus, in this category, we cannot include teachings that often display a striking and pompous style. Pompous, you know what it is? Pompous in English? Pompeux in French?
I think it's sophisticated, no?
Yeah, yes, more blah blah, more bling bling,
Yeah,
a lot
pompous
of
would
nice
be-
things to make something nice, and this something may be false. So the good spirits, they come straight to the point. They will not make a lot of blah
pompous
blah.
would be somebody boasting, somebody acting bigger than they are.
Voila, exactly. To hide behind the language some insufficiency of the ideas. Tagada. Pompous style, since they come from spirits who are more pretentious than wise and who wish to deceive us. Okay. So as soon as it is blah blah, the good spirits, they say a lot of things in few words. When you have long communication, you should be already why all this blah blah in order for a simple teaching. It's already a first motive of suspicion that it is not serious or not instructive. Okay. However, such spirits cannot disguise their shallowness or keep up their charade for very long. They soon expose their weak side by showing little continuity in their communications or by challenging of their statements. And this was really when you look to the in the Spirits magazine, for instance, the communication given by how Kardec did discuss with the spirits. he was always challenging and challenging and asking again and asking again. And the good spirits, they understand this. The good spirits are advising us to behave in this way, okay, in challenging the question. So they will not feel offended if something new comes and it's surprising for us. It may be true, and we really go and ask more and more and more questions, challenging the first statement in order to understand better. So they will come and answer. By the way, we can see also, you remember this conversation with the spirit of Erastus we have seen in the previous section. Kardec did exactly behave like that for the apport, for instance, but he does, or how to move a table. Do they materialize their arms and lift the table? No, it's not like this that it happens, and so on and so on. So this is what we should also follow as an example. And the good spirit, of course, we should also not abuse of this. Once something is, how to say, well established, we should not ask and ask and ask again, do the spirit reincarnate and so on, you know, this type of question. Of course, a good spirit would answer, please read the books and you will see. Voilà. So I see the hand of Liz still risen, but I think it's from the first question. At least if you have a question, you can intervene if you want. Okay, let's go to the next item 138. The means of communication vary widely. By acting upon our physical organs and senses, spirits can express themselves through sight, apparitions, touch, concealed or visible tangible impressions, hearing, some noises, smell, odors whose cause is unknown. So these are, as we will see later on in the spirit's book, the different type of mediumship. So it is very, it varies widely as it is written here. Although it is very real, this last means of manifestation is undoubtedly the last dependable due to the numerous causes that can lead to error, and thus we will not make any time for it at present. What we must carefully examine are the diverse means of receiving communications, which is a regular and continuous exchange of ideas. The means for doing so are raps, speech, and writing. We shall pursue our study of them in special sub-chapters. Of course, if you want to have instructive communication, you need to receive a text with clear words, clear phrases, and so on. And he's still mentioning raps, you know. Raps is maybe still a little bit complicated. One noise for A, 2 noise for B, and 23 noises for Z. So it's you can imagine how complicated it is. But of course, speech and writing are the most commonly used today. And nowadays, so at that time, speech were a little bit more difficult because there was no recording device. So you needed someone writing very quickly to keep a trace of what is said. But today it's easier because with the recording means the speech is going quicker than the writing itself. And with the records, we can always transcribe what has been said in the mediumistic meetings in order to make it available, and also we can also share the records. Okay. Clear? Some more question about this? Or if not, we can go to the next section, which is chapter 11. Okay. And here, as Kardec is writing, raps, writing, speech or writing, he's starting with raps. Okay. Sematology and typology. So what means sematology? So semato is a Latin, I think, root, which means signs. So it's studied by science, and typology is by how to say, typing or hitting. So this is, as it is written here, the language of signals and of raps. And Kardec will also describe the alphabetical typology that was used at the beginning. And even at the time of Kardec, there were some mediums in south of France who were receiving poesy through the table, means through the alphabetical typology. And I have seen myself already also through a moving table, some mother communicating with her daughter who was around the table. So it is clearly, how to say, it was clearly one way of communicating. It may not be the most simple one, but yet some serious and instructive communication came through this means. So let's see what Kardec is telling us. The 139, the earliest intelligent manifestations were expressed by means of raps and typology. So here is clearly saying the earliest. So Medium's book has been written in 1961. So earliest means before 1861. Okay. And the first communication, including some questions and answers, he introduced in the Spirit's book, amongst others, came through raps or typology. Is it typology or typology? Sorry. Typology. Okay. This primitive method, restricted by the initial conditions of the process, offered only very little usefulness. Consequently, communication received in this manner were at first limited to monosyllabic yes-no responses through a predetermined number of raps. So one rap for yes, two raps for no, for instance. And this is complicated because the answer is only yes or no. So you have to make direct questions which can be answered by yes or no. For instance, you cannot ask to the spirit, what's your name? He cannot answer by yes or no. You can then ask, is your name Patrick? Then yes or no, and then imagine all the number of names you have to until you get the right one. Or is your name starting with a P? So this is why he says it's not very useful. It takes a long time, and it takes also, of course, because it's a physical effect, some energy from the medium which is here giving his fluids in order for the phenomenon to happen. As we have stated, however, the method was later improved upon. Raps are produced by two procedures through special mediums, and in order for this method to work an aptitude for physical manifestation, it usually required. The first procedure, which may be called seesaw typology, consists in the movement of a table which rises to one side and then drops to strike with the formerly upraised leg. All that is required of the mediums in this case is for them, all that is required from the mediums in this case is for them to rest their hand on the edge of the table. If they want to converse with a particular spirit, an evocation is required. If not, the first spirit to arrive or the one who habitually comes manifests itself. For example, having agreed that one strike means yes and two means no, the number does not matter. Questions are then asked of the spirit. Later, we will see which question we should refrain from asking. The problem is the briefness of the answer and the difficulty in formulating the question so that the answer can be either yes or no. Suppose we want to ask the spirit, what do you want? It can only respond with one word. So we would have to ask, do you want this? No. Do you want that? Yes, and so on. So it's exactly what I described a few minutes ago. Okay. So it's not very practical mean. But that is what they used at the beginning. 140. It is interesting to note that in employing this method, the spirit normally adds a sort of mimicry. So what is a mimicry?
Copying.
Mimic in France.
It's
Mimic
to copy
is,
when you copy something.
yes. So in mimic in French is a little bit different. It's you can understand that, for instance, who do you want to speak to, for instance? So then the table turns and goes in the direction of the person he wants to speak, you know? That is how I would understand. Or if he's really hitting very strongly, means it's a strong no, you know? So it's the mimicry which is added to the convention, okay? It expresses how emphatic the affirmation or negation is through the force of the strikes. You see exactly this. It may also express the nature of the sentiments that prompt it, violence by rough movements, or anger and impatience by strong repeated raps, like something thumping his or her foot with anger, to the point of even smashing the table leg to the floor. You see that this is typically the mimicry which is added to the convention. However, if it is a kind and gentle spirit, at the end of the session, it will incline the table as if waving goodbye. Another type of mimicry. If the spirit wants to address one of the participants directly, it will raise the table toward him or her, either smoothly or violently, depending on whether it wants to display affection or hostility. Properly speaking, this is semiotics or sign language, as typology is the language of raps. Okay. This is why the title of the section is Sematology and Typology. Here is a notable example of the spontaneous use of semiotics. So let's see another example now. We knew of a gentleman who was in his living room one day where several persons were involved in spirit manifestations when he received one of our letters. While he was reading it, the small table that was being used for the experiments suddenly moved towards him. When he had finished reading the letter, he went to place it on a table at the other end of the room. The small table followed him and directed itself towards where he had deposited the letter. Surprised at the coincidence, he thought there might be some relation between the movement and the letter. So he asked the spirits, who responded that it was one of our, Kardec's, familiar spirits. When the gentleman informed us of what had happened, we asked the spirit about its reason for the visit that it had made. It responded, "It is natural that I visit the person with whom you maintain relations, so that I can provide you and them both, if necessary, any needed advice." Okay, you see, so the spirit found that way, following that letter, to try to make the people which are in the room understand that it was, how to say, spirit, one of the Kardec's familiar spirits who was there at that moment. Okay. it is obvious that the spirits wanted to call the man's attention to the fact that it was there, and it had sought an opportunity to do so. A mute person could not have done any better. So the spirits could not speak yet. They were using the table, the raps, and so on, but they used the table like a mute person to try to understand his thoughts. So that's why typically the mimics or the sematology. Okay. Everything clear so far? It's quite simple. And this is interesting for those who never saw moving tables. I also took something like almost 8 years before I saw some moving table. The table is really going exactly how it is described here. And sometimes they're going away and the people, they have to run after the table. So this is, how to say, very, I mean, when we see it, we really understand very clearly what Kardec is writing here. One for one, it did not take long for typology to be improved upon and to be enriched with a more complete form of communication. It is alphabetical typology, which consists in the indication of letters by means of rap. It was then possible to receive words, sentences, and even entire discourses. Depending on the method employed, the table strikes as many raps as necessary to indicate each letter, that is, 1 strike for A, 2 for B, and so on, while someone records the letter indicated. The spirits indicates when the process is finished by means of a predetermined signal. So you see, this is already a little bit more sophisticated, but again, it is to hope that the word he wants to say has not many Z's, because for each Z you need to count 23 raps, and the people, one person can do only this, to count the raps and then write the letter. So it requires a little bit more organization in order to do it. But as Kardec writes, they could receive words, sentences, and even entire discourses and poetry, as I told, through this means. It is easy to see that this procedure is very slow and requires quite some time for the longest communications. Nevertheless, there were persons who were patient enough to use it in order to obtain several pages. This practice, however, led to the discovery of shortcuts that allowed the work to proceed faster. The one most commonly employed consists in having in front of the medium the alphabet and a series of numbers indicating units. While one medium is at the table, another points the letters if they want to obtain words, or to the numbers if they want to a number. When the second person reaches the letter needed, the table strikes a rap and the experimenter writes the letter. This procedure is repeated for the second, third, and following letters. If there is a mistake, the spirits warn the medium by making the table strike or move, and that they can start over. This procedure becomes quite rapid with practice. By guessing the word which has just started to form, according to the context, the communication procedure can be shortened. If there is any doubt, the spirit is consulted, and who then responds by yes or no. So you see, it's more sophisticated. There is A, B, C, D through Z, and 1, 2 through 0. And then one person goes, and then tuck, and the letter which was under his finger or whatever when at the rap is the letters they want. So this is, of course, for each letter you have to make this movement. So it's a little bit quicker, as Kardec is writing, but it needs also quite some patience. Okay. 142. All these effects may be obtained even more simply through wraps occurring within the wood of the table itself without any movement at all, in conformance with that we reported in the chapter on physical manifestation, number 64. This is known as internal typology. Okay, so instead of the table moving and making the wrap was just like a resonance inside the table itself. Like when you have a haunted house, the wrap seems to come from the walls, wherever. You do not always see some hammer moving and hitting, or a table moving and hitting something. The spirits, they can provoke these noises inside the walls or the table itself. Okay. Not all mediums are equally skilled at this latter form of communication, and some can only receive tilting table wraps. So some mediums can, some other mediums cannot. However, with practice, most can manage it, and this method has the double advantage of being faster, lending itself less to someone suspecting that the tilting can be attributed to voluntary pressure applied by the medium. That's always the suspicion of the people who do not observe properly the moving of the table. They always can say, no, but someone pushed the table. It is true that internal wraps can also be imitated by deceitful mediums. A hammer underneath the table, for instance, can also imitate it. The best things are subject to imitation, but this proves nothing against their reality. It's not because one can imitate something that this something does not exist. Okay. See the chapter towards the end of this volume entitled Fraud and Trickery that we will see in one of our next sessions. Okay. Yes. So let's continue. Whatever improvements may be introduced into this method, it can never attain the speed and ease that writing presents, which is why it is little used nowadays. Nonetheless, it is sometimes of interest because of its phenomenological aspect, particularly for newcomers, since it has the special advantage of peremptorily proving absolute independence from the medium's own thoughts. With this method, we often receive responses that are so unexpected and surprising that one would have to be very prejudiced indeed to deny the evidence. Thus, it had been a powerful motive of conviction for many individuals. However, when this method is employed, even more than when others are employed, spirits do not like to be submitted to the caprice of the curious who want to put them in the test with a question of the questions of the subject. Okay. Amongst these persons who were convinced by the moving table, you can have Kardec himself. He has started like this by seeing a moving table. Léon Denis also he started by reading the Spirit's book, but the first communication he received from his mentor, John of Prague, was through a moving table in a group of workers in the city of Le Mans in France. So it is exactly confirming what Kardec is saying. Sometimes it's not because it's a wraps or table or typology or sematology that you cannot receive very good things sometimes. Okay. And at the end, of course, spirits do not like to be submitted to the caprice of the curious. So the curiosity, as we have seen at the beginning of this lesson today, is how to say a deal breaker or a walk away condition for the serious spirit. Yes, Munir?
Oh, hi, Charles. It's actually, I want to ask you a question, because we see, for instance, in the case of wraps, Why, or have you come across any information about using Morse codes to do the to get the messages?
Morse code, yes, I think I have read something they were using the Morse code, yes. The
Okay,
problem of the
yeah.
Morse code is you need to have short beep and long beep. And with
Yes,
raps, you
yeah.
cannot have short rap and long rap. Huh?
Okay,
When the foot of the table is hitting the floor, it cannot be long.
right,
It's
yeah, I know.
always
Okay.
short. So that's one of the difficulties. And at that time, of course, there was already the writing, which was most used. But you can imagine, for instance, how to say this, the Morse code, when they
Yeah.
were emitting Morse, you have this, you put your finger on it, and,
Oh, the telegraph,
making
yeah.
the contact and the beeps
Yeah,
later on.
yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
So there
telegraph.
can be, instead of moving a table, moving that device.
Yes, yeah. That's what.
But I have to check.
Okay.
I remember something, but I don't remember where, and it was a long time ago.
See, because when you mentioned about choosing the letter and said, well, if we had, a bar or something just to, knock on the table when the letter was right, and then the telegraph came into my mind with Morse code and so on.
Yes.
Okay.
And the Morse
Thanks.
code is how to say, it's a kind of an ancestor of the keyboard.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that I saw, but it was in a movie. I think the movie Ghost. You have the spirit typing in the keyboard of the.
Okay. Yes, yeah.
I think there is some episode like that there. So that's possible.
Yeah.
Today we talk about instrumental transcommunication. Which is another similar way for having the communications coming through some physical effect.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
143, in order to better safeguard the independence of communications from the medium's own thoughts, several instruments have been invented, such as dial plates, on which letters like those used in electric telegraphs have been engraved. A needle which moves under the medium's influence and with the help of a conducting wire and pulley indicates the letter. So you see here we are close to the Ouija board. It's with a pulley and a wire, so making like an indicator moving on the letters. And the Ouija board there is a piece of wood with an indicator as well, with some rolls under the spherical rolls where the hand of the medium is going and pushing to the letters. Okay. Rafaela?
Charles, I have a question about the Ouija board.
Yes.
I have experienced in my family 2 situations where one was a school friend. They did the Ouija board in class when there was no one at school because there's no health and safety as it is in Europe. And one of the children that did it, they were in the very early teens, like 13, 14. There was nothing really wrong with her, but since she did the Ouija, she developed uncontrolled like mediumship and mental health, and she spent years and years without balance, like couldn't go to school and having seizures, and she just never became the same. Like her mental health was so affected, she literally developed madness. And the same thing happened to my cousin. He ended up he did the Ouija board frequently, maybe as a teenager, maybe for like 3-4 months. And the same thing happened. He ended up in a mental health institution, and it took him a good 10 years to recover. He's fine now. He's okay. He's balanced. But my question is, why are those practices so powerful to destroy, especially young people's lives, and to bring them back to sanity is so complicated?
I would say that this is not specific to Ouija board. It is, if the teenager, for instance, take a pen and is writing, he can fall in the same process of obsession or fascination as with the Ouija board or as with the glass of water or as whatever other mean. So the mediumship is a neutral faculty. It can be used, how to say, for the curiosity in good or in bad. And so what is important behind is the teaching, knowing what is happening behind and knowing also what are the risks. Like we have seen in the previous section about the serious communication, how to analyze and to judge the answers which are given, and never go and trust whatever answer is given. So the problem is not on the way to communicate. The problem is more on knowing mediumship, knowing the spiritual world, knowing the different type of spirits we can have to deal with, and learning how to make the differences, and also trying to join some persons with more experience and so on. So, you know, the precautions for preventing such things are exactly the same as we are teaching always during these mediumistic courses for any type of mediumship. Of course, the Ouija board and the moving table for young people, for instance, who are guided at the beginning by the curiosity, is something moving. It's more flashy, you know, than just to take a pen and writing, which is, okay, he's writing what goes through his mind and whatever, you know. When there is some physical effect, of course, it calls more the curiosity of the young people, of the teenager. But the one who really, where it went wrong, who got mad, he would have got mad by any other mean or any other type because he had this predisposition, how to say, or maybe some particular spirit persecuting him from past life and so on. And the cause has to be looked in that way. Okay. I don't think it's because Ouija board, Munir, I don't know what you think, but Ouija board or moving table or writing or even whatever type of mediumship, you anyhow have this risk if you don't care, if you don't exerce your discernment, you have the risk to have some spirit trying to manipulate you or to fascinate you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Charles. I think it's not the method, it's actually the fact that, you know, some people who have this predisposition, they establish a mediumistic link during Ouija board. And what is very common in Brazil, kids, they say, you know, playing with a glass of water, you know, where they sit around the table, put a glass of water and ask the spirits to say yes or no. Also, they hang a ring from a piece of string. And then, you know, they want the spirit to move it one way or the other to say yes or no. It's very popular between, you know, kids. And some of them also, they get really, how to say, you notice the consequences of that. So it's not the method itself. It's actually the fact that, you know, these kids are establishing a mediumistic communication. And some of them, as Charles said, with a predisposition to obsession or whatever, it becomes then very, very clear from that moment, establishes, consolidates, I would say, the process of obsession, of, you know, spiritual interference or whatever.
The first time I heard about spiritist manifestation, far before I knew Kardec or read any book of Kardec, was a friend who was participating to a group, and they were moving a glass with water, okay?
Yeah.
And he was clearly saying the glass was moving. But in one session, they lost the control, and the glass suddenly went away and broke against the wall, which was aside. So they got afraid and they stopped it, you know. Probably a benefactor was there in order to tell them, before doing such things, please study a little bit more. Yes, Denise?
Yeah, I just like to add something to Rafaela. My sister, when she was a teenager, she did that at my house with her friend. And back then, my auntie, she used to do mediumship meetings. And she said that she received, that they discovered that it was 2 teenagers that came to the house because they called and they were there because they were saying they were invited. So she had kind of doctrinate them so they could move away. So that's how, I think that's what happened, Rafael, that any kind of funny spirits can come around when you call them in this kind of like experiment.
Thank you.
And the teenagers, generally, they have, how to say, the fluids and so on is a little bit abundant, and then the how to say, the physical effects are starting very quickly with them. Okay, so let's, so with this poulet, we have only become familiar with such instruments through designs and descriptions published in America. So America is where, after Hydesville, these things developed a lot. Thus, we cannot determine their true worth, but it seems that their complexity would be quite inconvenient. We believe that independence from the medium is perfectly proven by internal RAPs, even more by the unexpectedness of the answers than by all other material means. Moreover, these believers who are always predisposed to seeing pieces of string and setups, which will be even more inclined to distrust some sort of special mechanism than a plain table devoid of any kind of accoutrements. So very, very important, this last sentence of Kardec. It's more by analyzing the information received than by the modus operandi that you can, how to say, know whether it comes from the medium or not. And this you can apply for any type of mediumship, even by writing, by analyzing what they receive. And also being conscious that whatever the mean is, even internal RAPs, the medium is influencing the communication he receives. So you never get total independence from the medium in a communication. That's a dream. So it is something we have to live with. And even by moving a table, the spirits are clearly saying, even moving a table, the medium which is giving the fluid enabling the table to move is influencing the result and the communication which is transmitted through the table. So independence from the medium is, how to say, of course, the more independent, the better, but you can never be sure 100%. Liz?
Just very quickly before you finish the meeting, just saying on what Kardec says here, people who once they will see all pieces of string everywhere, and it just sent me to remember something I read about Chico Xavier, about one of the people that didn't agree with what he did and didn't think it was his mediumship. Anyway, a man of his caliber and having people left, right, and center, multitude of people coming to his house. And what this person said is like he had people all over the country to feed him with information. This team must have been really good and working 24/7 to kind of guess who on earth were going and see him. It is just impressive what people can say.
Exactly. Okay, so
Time is
it's
up,
our
yeah.
time. I just put a sign here, Munir, 144.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not
put
here
in
next
mind,
week.
yes.
I should be here again.
Okay.
And we will restart from this point. Thanking all of you for the participation, thanking also all the good spirits who were with us in order to bring us the thinking and the reflections about all these questions to make us understand better and better all the mechanism behind mediumship. and wishing all of you an excellent day and an excellent week. And it will be with big happiness that we will meet again next week. Thanks a lot, and
Thank you.
all the
Thanks
best.
very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Charles.
guys.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
weekend. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.